They say mothers are the backbone of the family, that we carry love in our hands and sacrifice in our bones, that no matter how hard life gets, a mother's love holds everything together. But no one talks about what happens when that love gets thrown away, ripped apart, and spat on by the very people you raised. And today, I'm not telling you some made-up drama. I'm telling you my truth. And if you've ever been betrayed by your own blood, if you've ever given your everything to someone only to be cast aside like a stranger in your own story, then don't scroll, don't skip, because this might be the one story that says exactly what your heart has been screaming for years. I'm Carol, 64 years old, a widow, a mother, and until recently, the woman who believed that family meant forever, that the child I held in my arms, who clung to me during storms, who cried on my shoulder during heartbreaks, would never be the one to shatter me from the inside out. But life has a cruel way of teaching you that loyalty doesn't always live where you planted it. And this is how I lost my son to a woman who wore kindness like perfume but weaponized silence like a sword, and how I found myself lying on a kitchen floor, bruised, not just on my skin, but in the deepest part of my spirit, wondering how the child I raised could watch me suffer and choose to look away. I raised Josh on my own after his father died of pancreatic cancer when he was just 9, and back then I had nothing but a second-hand car, a part-time job at a diner, and dreams I shelved for years just so he could keep his dreams alive. And I remember the nights I went without food so he could eat, the cold mornings I walked him to school even when my feet were frozen in torn boots, and how he'd always hold my hand and say, "I'll take care of you one day, Mommy." And I believed him. I really did, because when you raise someone from your own flesh, love grows blindly, wildly, like a vine that wraps around your soul. And for a while, everything seemed okay. He graduated college, got a good job, fell in love, and that's when Rebecca entered the picture, with her pearl earrings and perfect posture, and a voice so sweet it felt like sugar melting in your ear. But deep beneath those Sunday smiles was something sharp, something controlling, and I didn't see it. Not at first, because like any mother, I wanted to like the woman who made my son smile. But little by little, the changes came. First, it was skipped dinners, then ignored texts, then birthday cards returned unopened. And when I'd call, Rebecca would answer with a clipped, "He's busy." Even though I could hear him in the background, laughing, and I felt it, that growing space between us, like someone was digging a canyon between me and the boy I once held through fevers and nightmares. And then came the house. The dream home they wanted outside Denver, beautiful, expensive, and just barely out of reach. And Josh called me late one night, said, "Mom, we need $100,000 for the down payment. Can you help us?" And I froze, not because I didn't want to help, but because I couldn't. Not without giving up the little retirement I had, not without risking everything I'd saved for decades. And I said, "Josh, I need to think." And I heard Rebecca in the background, whispering something I couldn't make out, and then he hung up, and 3 days later, I showed up with a casserole, just like old times, hoping we could talk, hoping we could connect. But the moment she opened that door, I knew I was walking into something colder than rejection, and Rebecca didn't even pretend to smile. She just looked me in the eye and said, "Did you bring the check?" And I told her no, that I couldn't afford it right now, and her face changed, not with sadness, but with something close to disgust, and she stepped forward, close, too close, and said, "You've had your time, Carol. Now get out of the way." And before I could move, before I could even speak, she shoved me hard. I fell backwards, hit my shoulder on the kitchen island, pain shooting like fire through my arm, and Josh ran in, saw me on the ground, saw the fear in my eyes, and you know what he did? Nothing. He walked to her, asked if she was okay, and then looked at me and said the most heartbreaking words I've ever heard. "Mom, I think you need to stay away from us for a while." And in that moment, I realized I didn't lose my son today. I lost him years ago, piece by piece, silence by silence, until this woman held his heart, and I was just a shadow of his past. And I went home that night with more than a bruised shoulder. I had a broken soul, and I sat on my porch, watching the wind dance with the trees, and then came the text for words. "Stay away from us." No apology, no explanation, just a dismissal, and I stared at it for a long time, tears burning my eyes, and then I typed, "Okay," and hit send. But what they didn't know, what they never bothered to ask, was that I was the co-signer on that mortgage, the very paper holding their dream together. And that same week, I walked into the bank, heart shattered but spine straight, and I said, "Cancel it all." And the woman at the counter looked shocked, asked if I was sure, and I nodded, said, "They told me to stay away." So I'm staying away from their debts, their dreams, their demands. And the loan? Denied. Their house? Gone just like that. And when they found out, they called, texted, screamed into voicemail after voicemail, and I didn't reply, not because I didn't love him, but because I finally realized love without respect is self-destruction, and silence sometimes is the most powerful answer. And it's been 9 months now, no calls, no birthdays, just me and my garden, and some days I cry, yes, because a mother never truly stops loving, even when her heart is bleeding, but every petal I plant, every sunset I watch, every meal I cook just for myself reminds me. I may have lost a son, but I reclaimed a self I forgot existed, and I tell you this not to gain pity, but because someone out there, maybe you, is hurting in silence, shrinking in someone else's shadow, breaking under the weight of love that only flows one way, and I want you to hear this clearly. You are not weak, you are not worthless, and you are not wrong for finally choosing yourself, because real love doesn't ask you to disappear. Real love doesn't bruise your body or break your spirit. And if this story made your chest tighten, your eyes well up, your heart whisper, "Me too," then I beg you, comment below, share your story, your voice, your truth, because this space, this channel, is not just about storytelling. It's about healing, about saying the things we were told to bury, about rising from the ashes people left us in. And if you're still watching, if your soul is still listening, then please don't just scroll away. Subscribe, not for me, but for every mother, every father, every child who gave their all and got silence in return, because this community, it's for the unheard, the unseen, the uncelebrated, and together, we're not just surviving, we're rising, we're speaking, we're telling the world that we matter, our stories matter, and our voices will never again be silenced, no matter who tries to push us down.